The rain-slicked streets of Seattle gleamed under neon lights, but inside me, a storm was brewing. I'd spent months convincing myself that my feelings for Javier Morales were a dead end, a hopeless crush on a guy who'd never look at me the way I looked at him. Then, last night, he stumbled into my arms, lips crashing against mine, tears soaking my shirt as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Eli." My name's Eli Carter, 24, a graphic designer scraping by in a cramped Capitol Hill apartment. I'm black, queer, and used to keeping my heart under lock and key. Seattle's not exactly a small town, but it's small enough for gossip to sting. Javier, 25, is the charming barista at the coffee shop I haunt daily, a Puerto Rican transplant with a smile that could melt glaciers and a laugh that makes my knees weak. He's got this effortless cool, flannel shirts, worn-in sneakers, and a habit of calling everyone man, like he's auditioning for a 90s sitcom. I thought he was straight. Everyone did. His Instagram was a parade of gym selfies and flirty comments from women. But that night at the bar changed everything. It was a Friday, the kind of night where the city hums with possibility. My best friend, Priya, dragged me to the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar in Belltown packed with hipsters and overpriced IPAs. "You need to stop pining over Mr. Coffee and live a little," she said, tossing her braids over her shoulder. I rolled my eyes but followed her inside, scanning the crowd for Javier like some lovesick puppy. He was there, leaning against the bar, joking with the bartender, his dark hair falling into his eyes. My heart did that stupid flip it always did. Priya nudged me. "Go talk to him, Eli. What's the worst that could happen?" He could laugh in my face," I muttered, sipping my beer to hide my nerves. But Priya's glare was relentless, so I wove through the crowd, heart pounding. Javier spotted me and grinned, waving me over. "Yo, Eli, man, you made it." His voice was warm, like he was genuinely happy to see me. I tried not to read into it. We talked for hours, about his art history classes at Seattle U, my latest freelance gig designing posters for a local band, and the time he accidentally set his kitchen on fire trying to make empanadas. He was tipsy, his cheeks flushed, and I was falling harder with every word. Then the bartender slid a tray of tequila shots our way, courtesy of some guy celebrating his birthday. Javier raised a glass, his eyes locking onto mine. "To bad decisions," he said, clinking his shot against mine. I laughed. "You're gonna regret that toast." He didn't. Not yet. We downed the shots, the burn hitting my throat as the bar spun around us. The music got louder, the crowd rowdier, and Javier grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the tiny dance floor. "Come on, man, let's move," he shouted over the bass. I'm not a dancer, but with his hand in mine, I didn't care. We swayed, laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the world was just us. Then he stumbled, catching himself against my chest. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm and tequila sharp. "Eli," he said, voice low, almost a whisper. Before I could process it, his lips were on mine, soft, urgent, tasting of salt and regret. The bar faded away. My hands found his waist, pulling him closer, and for one perfect second, I let myself believe this was real. Then he pulled back, eyes wide, tears brimming. "I'm sorry," he choked out, voice breaking. "I can't. I'm not." He turned and bolted toward the exit, leaving me frozen, heart hammering, the taste of him still on my lips. I found him outside, sitting on the curb, head in his hands. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, streetlights casting long shadows. I sat beside him, not knowing what to say. "Jav, you okay?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't look at me. "I'm such a mess, Eli. You don't even know." His shoulders shook, and when I put an arm around him, he leaned into me, sobbing. I thought I could keep it together, but I can't. Not with you. I held him, my crush unraveling into something deeper, more complicated. Talk to me, I said. Whatever it is, I'm here. He took a shaky breath, wiping his eyes. I've been lying to everyone. To myself. I'm not straight, Eli. I've known for years, but I was too scared to admit it. My family, my friends back home, they'd never understand. And then I met you, and it's like I couldn't hide anymore. His words hit me like a tidal wave. Javier, the guy I'd written off as unattainable, was confessing something I'd never dared to hope for. But the pain in his voice, the weight of his fear, kept me grounded. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was real, raw, and terrifying for both of us. We sat there for what felt like hours, the city buzzing around us. He told me about growing up in San Juan, where his dad's strict Catholic beliefs left no room for different. About moving to Seattle to escape, only to find the fear followed him. About the girls he dated to keep up appearances, each one a lie that tore him apart. And about me, how my quiet smiles at the coffee shop made him question everything. I didn't mean to kiss you, he said, finally meeting my eyes. But I don't regret it. I wanted to kiss him again, to tell him I'd been falling for him since the first time he remembered my coffee order. But he was fragile, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to hold us both together. You don't have to figure it all out tonight, I said. But you don't have to do it alone, either. He nodded, leaning his head against my shoulder. The night stretched on, and I knew this was only the beginning. Of what, I wasn't sure. But as the city lights flickered, I felt something shift. Maybe love wasn't just about the spark. Maybe it was about being there when the walls came down. The next morning, I woke up with Javier's confession echoing in my head, my heart a tangle of hope and dread. I'd walked him home last night, his hand brushing mine as we navigated the quiet streets. Now, staring at my ceiling, I wondered if he'd wake up regretting everything, or if he'd even remember. I dragged myself to the coffee shop, half hoping he wouldn't be there. But there he was, behind the counter, his usual grin replaced with a nervous glance. Hey, Eli, he said, handing me my usual latte without meeting my eyes. The shop was busy, customers chattering, but the air between us felt heavy, like we were the only two people in the room. Can we talk later? I asked, keeping my voice low. He nodded, almost imperceptibly, and I left with my coffee and a knot in my stomach. The day crawled by, my freelance work a blur of half-finished designs. All I could think about was Javier, his tears, his kiss, the weight of his truth. I wanted to fix it, to make it easier, but I barely knew how to handle my own feelings. That evening, we met at a park near Lake Union, the cherry blossoms just starting to bloom. Javier looked exhausted, his flannel wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. I didn't sleep, he admitted, sitting on a bench. Kept thinking about last night. Me too, I said, sitting beside him. The lake sparkled under the fading sun, and I wanted to reach for his hand, but I didn't. Not yet. You don't have to say anything you're not ready for, Jav. He laughed, a bitter sound. That's the problem. I'm not ready for any of this. I spent years pretending I'm someone I'm not. And now you make me want to stop pretending, but I'm terrified. I swallowed hard, his words cutting deeper than I expected. Terrified of what? Of everything, he said, voice cracking. My family disowning me. My friends turning their backs. Losing everything I've built here. But mostly I'm scared of hurting you. You deserve someone who's got their shit together, Eli. Not me. My chest tightened. You don't get to decide what I deserve, I said, sharper than I meant. I've spent months thinking you'd never see me the way I see you. And now you're telling me you feel something too, but you're ready to run because it's hard? That's not fair. He flinched, but he didn't look away. You're right. It's not. But I don't know how to do this. I've never let myself feel this way about a guy before. The vulnerability in his voice softened me. I reached out, resting my hand on his. You don't have to know how. We can figure it out together. For a moment, he didn't move. Then his fingers curled around mine, tentative but real. Okay, he whispered. But I'm gonna mess this up, Eli. I know I will. Then we'll mess it up together, I said, smiling despite the ache in my chest. We sat there, hands clasped, watching the sunset paint the sky in pinks and golds. It wasn't a promise of forever, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, we fell into a fragile rhythm. Coffee dates turned into late-night walks, then dinners at my place where Javier would ramble about art while I pretended to understand. He was still skittish, pulling back whenever things got too intense, but every time he smiled at me, I felt like we were building something real. Then came the call that changed everything. I was at his apartment, sprawled on his couch, when his phone rang. His face paled as he saw the caller ID, his dad. He answered, his voice tight, speaking in rapid Spanish. I caught fragments, something about a family emergency, his mom being sick. When he hung up, he looked like he'd been punched. I have to go back to San Juan, he said, voice hollow. My mom's in the hospital. They don't know if she'll make it. I stood, crossing the room to him. I'll come with you, I said without thinking. He shook his head. You can't. My family, they don't know about me. About us. If they saw us together, he trailed off, but I understood. San Juan wasn't Seattle. His dad's strict beliefs, the ones he'd run from, would be waiting for him. I don't care, I said, stubborn. You shouldn't have to do this alone. He looked at me, eyes searching mine, and for the first time, I saw something like hope. You'd really come? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, I said. I'm not letting you face this by yourself. He pulled me into a hug, his grip tight, like he was afraid I'd disappear. Thank you, he murmured into my shoulder. And as I held him, I realized this wasn't just about love anymore. It was about standing by someone, even when the world felt like it was crumbling. San Juan was a shock to my system. Humid, vibrant, and loud in a way Seattle never was. The plane landed late, the air thick with the scent of salt and flowers. Javier was quiet the whole flight, his knee bouncing nervously. I kept my hand on his, a silent anchor, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. This wasn't just about his mom's illness. It was about returning to a place that had shaped his fears. We took a cab to the hospital, the city blurring past in a riot of colors, bright murals, crowded markets, music spilling from open windows. Javier's family was already there, gathered in a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and coffee. His dad, a stern man with Javier's eyes, barely acknowledged me, assuming I was just a friend. His older sister, Maria, was warmer, offering me a tired smile as she hugged Javier tightly. She's stable for now, Maria told us, her voice strained. But the doctors say it's touch and go. Javier nodded, his jaw tight, and disappeared into his mom's room. I stayed in the waiting room, feeling like an outsider. Maria sat beside me, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. You're good for him, she said quietly, surprising me. He's different with you, less guarded. I didn't know how to respond. I just want him to be okay, I said finally. She nodded, her eyes distant. He's been running from this place for a long time. From our dad, mostly. But he loves Mom. This is going to hit him hard. Hours passed, and when Javier finally emerged, he looked wrecked. She's awake, he said, voice hoarse. She wants to see you, Eli. I followed him into the room, my heart pounding. Javier's mom, Carmen, was frail but alert, her smile weak but genuine. You must be Eli, she said, her accent thick. Javier talks about you. I glanced at him, surprised. He blushed, looking away. Mom, don't embarrass me, he muttered, but there was a softness in his voice I hadn't heard before. Carmen reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Take care of my boy, she said. He's stubborn, but his heart's good. I nodded, my throat tight. I will. That night, we stayed at Maria's apartment, a small place filled with family photos and the smell of arroz con pollo. Javier was quiet, lost in thought. When we were alone, he turned to me, his eyes raw. "I need to tell them," he said. "About me. About us. If Mom doesn't make it, I can't keep lying." My heart sank. "Jav, you don't have to do this now. You're already dealing with so much." But he shook his head. "I've been hiding my whole life. I don't want it anymore. Not with you here." The next day, he told Maria first. She listened, her face unreadable, then pulled him into a fierce hug. "I knew," she said simply. "And I love you. Always will." His dad was a different story. We were back at the hospital when Javier asked to speak to him alone. I waited outside, my stomach in knots, hearing raised voices through the door. When Javier came out, his eyes were red, but his shoulders were squared. "He's angry," he said. "Told me I'm a disappointment. But I don't care anymore. I told him I love you, and I'm not taking it back." I pulled him into my arms, not caring who saw. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. He clung to me, and for the first time, I felt like he was truly letting me in. Carmen got better over the next few days, her strength returning slowly. Javier spent every moment he could with her, and I saw a side of him I hadn't before. Gentle, patient, full of love. But his dad's rejection lingered, a shadow over his progress. I tried to be his rock, but I was struggling too. What did it mean to love someone who was still learning to love themselves? One night, under the stars on Maria's balcony, Javier took my hand. "I don't know what happens next," he said, "but I know I want you in it." I kissed him, slow and sure, the ocean breeze wrapping around us. "I'm not going anywhere," I promised. And in that moment, I believed we could face anything, his family, his fears, the world. Back in Seattle, the city felt different, like we'd brought a piece of San Juan's intensity with us. Javier was changed, too. He carried himself with a quiet strength, but there were moments when the weight of his dad's words still pulled him under. I wanted to fix it, to shield him from the pain, but I was learning that love doesn't erase scars. It just helps you carry them. We fell into a new routine. Javier started opening up more, not just to me, but to Priya and our small circle of friends. He even joined a local LGBTQ+ support group, something I never thought he'd do. "I'm tired of being scared," he told me one night, his head resting on my chest as we lay on my couch. "I want to be someone you're proud of." "I already am," I said, kissing his forehead. But I wasn't naive. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. His dad had stopped calling, and though Carmen was recovering, the distance between Javier and his family was a wound that hadn't healed. One evening, as we walked through Pike Place Market, the air alive with the scent of fresh flowers and fish, Javier stopped at a stall selling handmade journals. He picked one up, running his fingers over the leather cover. "I want to start writing," he said. "About everything. Growing up, coming out you. Maybe it'll help me make sense of it all." I grinned. "You're going to write a bestseller about me, huh?" He laughed, the sound bright and free. "Maybe, but you're not the main character. I am." That moment, watching him smile under the market's neon lights, felt like a victory. Not because everything was perfect, but because he was starting to claim his own story. I realized then that loving him wasn't about fixing his pain. It was about standing beside him as he found his way. Months later, Carmen visited Seattle. She was stronger now, her warmth filling my tiny apartment as she cooked mofongo and teased Javier about his terrible dishwashing skills. She pulled me aside one night, her eyes soft. "You kept your promise," she said. "You're taking care of him." I shook my head. "He's taking care of himself. I'm just lucky to be along for the ride." She smiled, patting my cheek. "Your family now, Eli." Javier's dad never came around, but Maria did, visiting often and becoming a fierce ally. The pain of his dad's rejection didn't vanish, but it became a part of Javier's story, not the whole of it. He started sharing his writing at open mic nights, his words raw and powerful, drawing tears and applause from strangers. I watched him, my heart swelling, knowing he was becoming the person he'd always been too afraid to be. One spring evening, under the cherry blossoms by Lake Union, Javier took my hand. "I love you," he said, his voice steady, no trace of fear. "I don't know if I'll ever be completely okay, but with you, I feel like I can try." I pulled him close, kissing him as the petals fell around us. "I love you too," I said, "and we've got time to figure out the rest." The world wasn't perfect. There were still whispers, judgments, moments of doubt. But as we stood there, wrapped in each other, I knew we'd built something stronger than fear. Love wasn't the absence of struggle, it was the courage to face it together. And for Javier and me, that was enough.